We started with 3 men, but not until the captain had seen that the Malay was safely secured. Then we started, and the people aboard the other schooner were so busy with their captives that we got alongside, and the captain, Dr. Grant, and I had climbed on board before a red-faced fellow with a violently inflamed nose came up to us and with an oath asked us what we wanted there. "Here, you speak," whispered the captain to Dr. Grant. "I'm riled, and I shall only be using more bad language than is good for these youngsters to hear. Give it to him pretty warm, though, all the same, doctor." "D'ye hear?" said the red-faced fellow again. "What do you want here?" "Those poor wretches, you slave-dealing ruffian!" cried the doctor, who looked quite white as he drew himself up and seemed to tower over the captain of the other schooner, who took a step back in astonishment, but recovered himself and advanced menacingly. "Come for them, have you, eh?" he roared. "Then you'll go without 'em. Here, over you go. Off my ship, you—" The scoundrel did not finish his speech, for as he spoke he clapped a rough hairy paw on the doctor's shoulder, and then our friend seemed to shrink back at the contact, but it was only to gather force, like a wave, for somehow just then his fist seemed to dart out, and the ruffianly captain staggered back, then fell heavily on the deck. Half a dozen men sprang forward at this, but Dr. Grant did not flinch. He merely took out his revolver and examined its lock, saying, "Will you have these poor fellows get into our boat, captain?" "Aye, aye, doctor," cried our skipper, and the slave-dealing crew shrank back and stared at us as we busily handed down the blackbirds, as the captain kept on calling them. Poor creatures, they were still half stunned, and 2 of them were bleeding, and it must have seemed to them that they were being tossed out of the frying pan into the fire, and that we were going to carry on the villainy that our ruffianly countrymen had commenced. In fact, had we not taken care and even used force, they would have jumped overboard when we had them packed closely in. "Here, shove off," said the captain, as we were once more in our boat, and just then the leader of the ruffians staggered to his feet and leaned over the side. "I'll have the law of you for this," he yelled. "This is piracy." "To be sure it is," said our captain. "We're going to hoist the black flag as soon as we get back and run out our guns. Come on, my red-nosed old cocky-wax, and we'll have a naval engagement and sink you." He nudged me horribly hard with his elbow at this point, and turning his back on the schooner winked at me, and chuckled and rumbled as if he were laughing heartily to himself in secret. But he spoke again directly, quite seriously. "I haven't got no boys of my own," he said, "but if I had, I should say this was a sort of lesson to you to always have right on your side. It's agin the law, but it's right all the same. See how we carried all before us, eh, my lads? The doctor's fist was as good as half a dozen guns, and regularly settled the matter at once." "Then may we set these poor fellows free now?" I said. "Well, I shouldn't like to be one of them as did it," said the captain dryly. "Look at the shore." I glanced in that direction and saw that it was crowded with blacks, all armed with spears and war clubs, which they were brandishing excitedly. "They wouldn't know friends from foes," said the doctor quietly. "No, we must wait." I saw the reason for these remarks, and as soon as we had reached the side of the schooner and got our captives on board, I attended the doctor while he busied himself bandaging and strapping cuts, the blacks staring at him wondering, and then at Jimmy, who looked the reverse of friendly, gazing down at the prisoners scornfully, and telling Jack Penny in confidence that he did not think much of common sort black fellow. "Jimmy give all of men waddy spear if try to kedge Jimmy," he said, drawing himself up and showing his teeth. "No kedge Jimmy, killer all." It was hard work to get the poor prisoners to understand that we meant well by them. "You see they think you're having them patched up," said Jack Penny, "so that they'll sell better. I say, Joe Carstairs, give your black chap a topper with his waddy. He's making faces at that chap and pretending to cut off his legs." "Here, you be quiet, Jimmy, or I'll send you below," I said sharply; and as I went to the breaker to get a pannikin of water for one of the men, Jimmy stuck his hands behind him, pointed his nose in the air, and walked forward with such a display of offended dignity that Jack Penny doubled up, putting his head between his knees and pinning it firm while he laughed in throes, each of which sent a spasm through his loose jointed body. The black to whom I took the water looked at me in a frightened way and shook his head. "He thinks it's poison, Joe," said the doctor quietly, and I immediately drank some, whereupon the prisoner took the pannikin and drank with avidity, his companions then turning their eager eyes on me. "It is the feverish thirst produced by injuries," said the doctor, and as I filled the pannikin again and again the poor wretches uttered a low sigh of satisfaction. The schooner lay where we had left it, and all seemed to be very quiet on board, but no movement was made of any offensive nature, and the day glided by till towards sundown, when there was less excitement visible on the shore. Then the captain ordered the boat to be lowered on the side away from the land, while he proceeded to sweep the shore with his glass. "I think we might land 'em now, doctor," he said, "and get back without any jobs for you." "Yes, they seem pretty quiet now," said the doctor, who had also been scanning the shore, "but there are a great many people about." "They won't see us," said the captain. "Now, my blackbirds, I'm not going to clip your wings or pull out your tails. Into the boat with you. I'll set you ashore." For the first time the poor fellows seemed to comprehend that they were to be set at liberty, and for a few minutes their joy knew no bounds, and it was only by running off that I was able to escape from some of their demonstrations of gratitude. "No, my lad," said the captain in response to my demand to go with him. "I'll set the poor chaps ashore, and we shall be quite heavy enough going through the surf. You can take command while I'm gone," he added, laughing, "and mind no one steals the anchor." I felt annoyed at the captain's bantering tone, but I said nothing, and just at sunset the boat pushed off quietly with its black freight, the poor fellows looking beside themselves with joy. "I say, skipper," said the captain laughingly to me, "mind that Malay chap don't get out. And look here, it'll be dark directly. Hyste a light for me to find my way back." I nodded shortly, and stood with Jack Penny and the doctor watching the boat till it seemed to be swallowed up in the thick darkness that was gathering round, and the doctor left Jack Penny and me alone. "I say," said Jack, who was leaning on the bulwarks with his body at right angles, "I say, Joe Carstairs, I've been thinking what a game it would be if the captain never came back." "What?" I cried. "You and I could take the ship and go where we like." "And how about the doctor?" I said scornfully. "Ah!" he drawled, "I forgot about the doctor. That's a pity. I wish he'd gone ashore too." I did not answer, for it did not suit my ideas at all. The adventure I had on hand filled my mind, and I felt annoyed by my companion's foolish remark. We had tea, and were sitting with the doctor chatting on deck, after vainly trying to pierce the darkness with our eyes or to hear some sound, when all at once the doctor spoke. "Time they were back," he said. "I say, Skipper Carstairs, have you hoisted your light?" "Light!" I said excitedly. "What's that?" For just then a bright red glow arose to our right in the direction of the shore. "They're making a bonfire," said Jack Penny slowly. "Or burning a village," said the doctor. "No, no!" I cried. "It's that schooner on fire." "You're right, Joe," said the doctor excitedly. "Why, the savages must have gone off and done this, and yes, look, you can see the canoes." "Here, I say, don't!" cried Jack Penny then, his voice sounding curious from out of the darkness, and the same moment there was a rush, a tremendous scuffle. Jimmy yelled out something in his own tongue, then lastly there were 2 or 3 heavy falls, and in a misty stupefied way I knew that we had been boarded by the savages and made prisoners on account of the outrage committed by the other captain. What follows seems quite dreamlike, but I have some recollection of being bundled down into a boat, and then afterwards dragged out over the sand and hurried somewhere, with savages yelling and shouting about me, after which I was thrown down and lay on the ground in great pain, half sleeping, half waking, and in a confused muddle of thought in which I seemed to see my father looking at me reproachfully for not coming to his help, while all the time I was so bound I could not move a step. At last I must have dropped off into a heavy sleep, for the next thing I saw was the bright sunshine streaming into the hut where I lay,
and a crowd of blacks with large frizzed heads